It's a strange thing, listeners. Building a business where you are the product, your time, your mind, your energy, all up for negotiation. It's deeply personal, but it's also business. Somewhere between those two worlds, a lot of entrepreneurs start to lose themselves, especially those coming from corporate, where your role defined you, but suddenly your identity defines your role. Today, on this episode on the BizBlend podcast with your host Sana, we are unpacking that messy middle with someone who knows both sides of the financial coin. Listeners, meet my incredible guest, Justin Boyd. He spent over 2 decades in corporate finance and now he helps entrepreneurs find clarity and confidence in their numbers and honestly, in themselves. We'll talk about money, mindset, and also the mental gymnastics of separating the you from the brand. So with that, Justin, welcome to BizBlend, and it's really an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on.
Totally. Okay, let's first, Justin, start unpacking with the scenario. Let's try to understand how it looks like when the business is quote unquote you. So, after 20 years in corporate finance, you transitioned into consulting. Now, many, especially, senior employees or, people who have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, I think consulting is something, that I would also personally look for. Where exactly you essentially became the product in this scenario? So what was the most difficult part, the hardest part about that identity shift?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, yeah, and kind of my history, I did spend a lot of time in the corporate world. Even in the corporate world, you sort of struggle with your identity because it feels a lot like you are, you're owned by the company. You are only good for what your product is, and they can really define who you are. And early on, even for people in the corporate world, I found a good way to look at it where you need to view yourself as a partner with the company, and they are hiring you for your expertise, and you're really partnering with them, almost as a consultant mindset when you're still an employee, to say, hey, you are compensating me in exchange for my skills, and it's a two-way street. We both benefit, but I'm not owned by you, and I'm not, it gives you sort of identity in and of yourself, and that ownership over your own self. And the hardest part when you go to, sort of separate from that, I really loved, the corporate world. I was treated very well, but it was I always sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit, which was unique because I wasn't raised that way. My parents, my brother, my grandparents, everyone just had a 9-to-5 job. And that's the way I was raised. I'm the first person in my family that started a business. So that was a whole new thing where I was like, I really feel like this is what I want to do, and I can't work for corporate for the rest of my career. But I didn't really have a path or a mentor or guidance or a path to follow for someone that already did that. So it was very stressful, and my wife didn't have a regular job either. And so really trying to take that identity and move it into my own business and say, hey, I've sort of worked on honing this ability to view myself as a partner, and how do I bring value to other businesses in the same form or fashion? I'm not an employee anymore, but how do I view that, mindset as the same, where I have skills and I have abilities and I have a product that businesses need? How can I bring that in exchange for, compensation? So I would say, the hardest part was just starting the business to begin with, and not having a path to follow, and kind of trying to figure everything out on my own. And the other hard part is, as you mentioned, me as a consultant sort of being the product. So initially, when you're sort of developing your products and services, like what am I going to offer? What's valuable to people? Every time I got a no, every time people quit, I took that personal as a rejection of me, right? I felt like every time that happened, I was being fired from a job. And so it was really hard to say, you know what, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's just the services that I'm offering. And I need to just tweak that or adjust that. Maybe it's a pricing thing. Maybe it's, there's other things I could be doing that are more valuable. So the hardest part there is just separating yourself. Like, did I underperform? Did I not do what I was supposed to do? Or was it, a black and white, they got a service that they didn't want, or they didn't get enough, and I can just tweak the services and, I'm fine, but it's just, what I'm offering. So that's really, and it's still to this day challenging to separate those things, but that's a really difficult thing, going to work on your own and feeling like I'm failing as a business owner because some people said no. And it's like, well, no, every business has people that say no. It's not a product and service that works for everybody all the time. And you have to accept that, and you have to not take it personally. So having that sort of headwind and challenge alongside of just making a business run, on your own, no matter what business it is, it was doubly challenging, I would say.
Wow. Yeah, I absolutely connect with that, Justin. Both aspects, let me first begin kind of understanding, like expressing what I understood. I think, first of all, it really, really speaks of the boldness and also the mental strength within you, Justin, because especially coming from a background where, you kind of haven't been within entrepreneurship or from a business background, you are not following any path. You are actually creating that path.
Right.
And I think that is something very, very bold. And one question that comes to my mind, Justin, that because, especially for people, even in my family also, like primarily, people have like worked in service sectors, paychecks, stable paychecks. They have seen that life of stability, paychecks, savings, retirement. Working, maybe freelancing or, gig working is something kind of very alien. So sometimes it kind of becomes very difficult to, uh, yeah, bridge that gap between these two worlds. So in terms of like your family or in your personal life, have to deal like, with any kind of like a difficulty or maybe a discomfort that, this is not something stable. You're taking a huge risk in here. We haven't done anything, something like this. So maybe you should be careful before you begin.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, from a structural standpoint, my wife was a teacher where we were. So to add to this, maybe the craziness of all of this, we actually decided to move locations. When COVID hit, we were living in Minnesota up north, and we actually decided to spend time traveling. And we said, you know what, we're looking, we've always been looking for a new place to live. I had sort of been looking for a new job or, to start my own business. I didn't know what that was going to look like. So we did have, my stable income, my wife's stable income, and we pulled the kids out of school. We started homeschooling them. We started traveling full time. And at the same time, I was still working my 9 to 5 because everybody went remote. And I did that for a year. But then I also decided to start my own business, within the next year or so. So we basically had no stability of family around us. We didn't have stability of our home that we once had. My wife's job went away, and she was homeschooling, and now all the financial burden was sort of on me. So we had a lot of things changing at the time. And I've had people say, have you, how crazy is that? I was like, I didn't really know how crazy it was until I look back. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we could have done that a little bit differently, but it all worked out. And with a lot of that, comes faith, and, there's a lot of things out of our control, and we're going to just trust that, God's got our back, and he's going to provide. But so I would definitely say, leaving that comfort and that stability was one of the hardest things. And then from a mental standpoint, I would say, I've dealt with, mental health issues in the past, and just trying to stay healthy. And, it's challenging when you have kids, and it's challenging when you're the, financial provider. And that becomes even more challenging to wrestle with when you do have your own business. Again, going back to the every failure is on me personally. I didn't do something correctly. But again, a big part, and I'm a perfectionist, so and a big part of running a business is trial and error, and things aren't going to work out, and you learn from them, right? You have to take the mindset of it's either success or it's learning. There's no failure, and so really trying to work on that and say, you know what, it's not going to be perfect, but I need to keep moving forward, and I need to try different things, and it's okay if they don't work the first time because I'm making this up as I go, right? And so just trying to balance the mental health, the physical health, which plays a big part of that, and with the mental health, the spiritual health, and all of those. If you don't keep those, and the family, the family and the finances, if you don't keep those things in balance, then you don't, as a consultant, you're not delivering your best product to your customers, right? If you're not in a good headspace, if you're not stable, if you're not, mentally healthy, physically healthy, it's really hard to deliver your best self to your customers to get them the best experience, which, breeds more success. So you really have to make those things a priority. You can't just show up and, not have everything else in balance. It's not going to work, right? And so that's an extra challenge of, success or failure is all on me. And when you're in the corporate world, you feel like you want to make more decisions. Like my boss is making a terrible decision and the company's making a terrible decision. And there's a better way to do it. And you always know what that is. But when you get to that point and you're running your own business, it's almost scary at some point. It's almost like there's too many choices. There's too many ways I could go and I can make all the decisions, but it's almost, overwhelming how many different ways you can go that you're just like, sometimes, it's like, I just want someone to tell me what to do, because there's too many choices. So again, keeping everything in balance, and not being afraid to fail, small things, and just trying to work up that courage and trying to forge your new path, see what works, see what doesn't, and not take those things personally. So that's that, in and of itself, historically for me, is trying to keep mentally healthy, physically healthy, and make yourself a priority in order to, deliver the best product. So balancing all that was definitely challenging. I didn't do well, in certain phases of my life, and there's certain weeks and months where I still have challenges with that. But, continuing to work toward it. Daily decisions are huge, right? Every single little decision that you make with what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to work out, what I'm going to do spiritually, makes a big difference. So it's not a all or nothing. It's not like, well, if I don't do it every day, it's a failure. It's no, just do as well as you can, and keep pushing forward and keep trying to make those daily habits a priority.
Exactly. I mean, that's and it may sound like a very difficult and very overwhelming terrain, but I think that's where our strength is tested. And you also mentioned about rejections. I mean, Justin, I have had conversations with guests. There was one particular conversation where we saw that how a business was born out of a single successful closure on call out of 5, I think it was 495 cold calls. Like 495 calls rejected and one call. It was quite a big brand, and the deal got closed, like the entire sales cycle started with that single call and it got closed, and that's how the business was born. So I think rejection is something that is a part of, especially in the entrepreneurship journey. And as you very perfectly said that, learning from them instead of kind of, sitting down on failures. I think that is something, as an entrepreneur, you have to kind of sign up for.
Yep. Yes, for sure. And having the limiting mindset of there's, every failure, it's like all the, there's nobody else out there that's going to buy my product. You really have to take the mindset of there's a lot of potential customers out there and more will come your way. And just because you lose a few, it's not a big deal. You learn from it, you tweak, you adjust. and then you try to get the next one. But the biggest thing is just staying true to yourself and staying true to what you're trying to deliver. And if it doesn't line up with someone, that's okay. Don't change yourself. Don't change the core, the essence of who you are and what your business is for those no's. We want to win business, but we want to stay true to ourselves. So adjust the things that make sense where you can still deliver better value or deliver what they need, but don't sacrifice who you are and what you're trying to do just for the money in the short term. That's another big thing, because there are a lot of customers out there. There's a lot of businesses that'll want to work with me. And it just takes time. And I've found a lot of people that line up really well with who I am, personality-wise, values-wise, and what they're looking for. And it's a mutually beneficial thing, and it's great. And some days I feel like there's nobody else out there, but that's definitely not the way to look at it. It's, there's endless supply of customers. I just have to find the best way to find them. But it's not, you can't have that limiting belief.
I agree. 100% agree. And also, one more factor which I want to focus on in here is like you have worked in structured corporate teams, and now often you work solo. So, what have you learned about the mental and emotional adjustment that comes with this isolation, if there is, or you may have a team?
Yes, I've learned it's challenging, and it's not. I knew going in that I was going at it sort of alone, but at the same time, I didn't really foresee or predict, kind of the feelings that come with that and what that feels like down the road. So it's, again, very challenging times where COVID hit, so we're already sort of being isolated from one another. And then we left our hometown, so we're being separated from friends and family. Again, it was our choice. I'm not blaming that on anybody, but it's just the reality of what it was. And then I'm leaving all my coworkers who I worked with for, over a decade. And, we were all working remote anyways, but I left all the coworkers. So now all of a sudden we have very challenging social circles with what's going on in the environment and with our decisions. And then the business I'm building was all based on, a virtual framework, because I'm not just going to work with people local to me. Everything now with tools and resources we have can be virtual. And there's all my clients are, all over the place in the United States. So, but what I found is it's very, just sort of getting up, doing my thing every day. It's very isolating. I'm very reliant on making decisions on my own, working with clients who are not physically there. I do have a couple employees, but they're not physically here either. And so you lose a lot of that social interaction, you know what I mean? Regardless of whether it's a client consultant relationship or a coworker relationship or a boss, employee relationship, you lose a lot of that. So we're living in a new place, we're, making new friends, and I get up every day, and it does a lot of times feel very lonely. And I miss having peers, I would say, to bounce ideas off each other. What if we did this? What if we did that? So I've found that you have to be very intentional about putting yourself in situations to get that social interaction. And it's important for me to do it in arenas where I'm not just trying to get new clients as well, because that you just feel it's different. It changes things. It puts more pressure on it, and it feels like you're watching, you're watching what you say and how you act and all that stuff. So I found it's very important to go out in the community and do networking events. I'm part of a mastermind group, getting together with friends, going to church, like all that stuff. It's very important to be intentional, joining groups of peers of people that do the same thing that I do, making sure I talk with my couple employees and making sure I make time for my family. So you have to be very intentional about setting these things in your life to get that face-to-face interaction with people, because even working with my clients virtually, it's not the same as when I see them face-to-face. And I do see them face-to-face sometimes, thankfully. And face-to-face is so much better. And you have to have that as part of the deal Otherwise, it does get very lonely. And again, finding peers in your industry or other people that you can bounce ideas off of and you can be vulnerable around, where it's not just clients, it's not friends that have no idea what you're doing or your spouse. It's people that understand your business, maybe have been through it in a similar business, where you can bounce ideas off them and you can have that, sharpening of your skills, because otherwise it does get very, very lonely, and that can have a negative effect on, your mental health and just your overall efficacy with what you're doing with your clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, I think it's such a beautiful blend of people you network or connect with, not only just from coming from an intention of, bouncing off ideas or sharing skills or getting experiences, but I think some of these experiences, they can be so life changing, because not only we are connecting with them for work or for mentoring, for guidance, but sometimes, it kind of becomes like this, symbiotic relationship that, I am taking away something which I can apply in my personal life. You are taking something away which you can apply in your professional life. So I think it's it's a symbiotic relationship. And at the same time, also, when you have a family and you are actually giving time to them, I think there are so many parallels between that human connection that we build in a workplace, the situations that we navigate through in both the worlds. So I think that is something for every entrepreneur, every freelancer, especially who are working remotely, who are connecting with clients, both physically and remotely. I think that is something should be leveraged very well.
Yes, absolutely.
Lovely, lovely. So before we wrap up, Justin, for our listeners, if they would like to connect with you, to seek some guidance, share their thoughts and opinions with you, and also get access to your work, your resources, what would be the best way?
Yep, for sure. So our website is yourcashflowcopilot.com. And then Instagram, we are cashflow.copilot. And then I also have, if you want to just, anybody who wants to set up time with me, I love to just chat with people. If they're like, hey, I have a question or I'm working through something, I love just helping people as much as I can. And so I do have a Calendly link. It's calendly.com/cashflowcopilot. Or, you can email me, Justin at yourcashflowcopilot.com. You can email me directly if you want. So yeah, those are all good ways to get a hold of me. Like I said, I'm always willing to help people, and we're also developing an educational platform for those who are a little bit newer and not quite ready to do a full consulting gig. So we're hoping to have that live early next year. But yeah, reach out again. I love to talk with people. I love to help people. However I can. So that's my purpose, and that's what I'm here for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you are in that industry, which is such an intrinsic part of, especially when we're talking about mental health, whether it's for entrepreneurs or just an individual person. Because I think cash flow, finance, spending, expenses, now we are talking about mindful spending. We're talking about financial health, financial wellness. So I think this is such a crucial work that you are doing, and it's really good to see that you are not only focusing on the business or the financial aspect, but it's a focus on the entire, all the aspects, because after all, we all are humans.
Yep, absolutely. And sometimes with some of my clients, we do find that, we veer off the financial discussions and it gets into the personal, and, I'm blessed, and I guess I'm thankful for the experiences that I've been through, because I can help to the best of my ability, help guide them and give them ideas on how, to deal with that in their own businesses as well, just like I am. And so that's really rewarding, and that's a lot of fun, and can develop a closer relationship between me and my clients, where it's not always about the dollars and cents all the time. Although, that is important, but it's so intertwined with their personal health and their vision and their energy toward their company as well. So that is a huge blessing and a huge opportunity to, again, build closer relationships with them and help them in ways that they're not signing up for that with me, but it's just something that I can guide them through it to the best of my ability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Super, super. So, listeners, what I'll do is I'll mention all the details and links in the show notes so that you can easily connect with Justin. And I think this conversation, it really, really gives us this takeaway that business growth, it isn't always or just only about scaling revenue. I think sometimes it is about scaling resilience. So when your name is your brand, you have got to build something that supports the human behind it, just like how Justin is doing. That means boundaries, systems, and yes, real conversations about money and mindset like this one. So, Justin, thank you so much for really shedding light on financial clarity. It's deeply human and also shedding light on the mental and physical health aspect of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I love these type of conversations, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin. And thank you so much to all the listeners for tuning into this episode of the BizBlend podcast. Until next time, keep blending the business with the being. And this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.